My name's Joy Howard and I run Hen Press, and this is a Hen reading. And we're reading from all of the, and I specialise in themed anthologies, and we're reading from all of them this afternoon so that you can get a good flavour. But just to say, it's really lovely to be here in the beautiful city of Cork, and thanks to Pat for asking us. And I'm going to introduce the poets one by one. The first person to read is going to be Angela Kirby, and she's going first because she has had poems in every single one of the Hen anthologies, all 12 of them so far, so she can represent us beautifully. Over to you, Angela.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's wonderful to be back in this beautiful city. It's a great honour to be reading here. So, as Joy said, I'm going to read through the collection, starting out with the first one, which was, straight to paper, A Twisted Malice, which came out in 2008. This is an aftertaste of salt. Men, they never know what they want. At first, they can't get enough of us, our phosphorescent breasts, the way our bodies flicker in the dark, the sequined flick of our tails, that risky salt aftertaste of anchovies and seaweed, and the way we are always a little ahead of them somewhere, way out beyond their bowsprits. But once they get to home, when the shine and the novelty wear off, they don't know what to make of us. Stay out late, sit by the fire, stare into it, take to drink, wish they had thrown us back, while their women work, walk on the other side of the street, pull in their skirts, teach the children to jeer, to say that we smell of fish. And this is just malice, misreading the entrails. That time your bay horse went home lame, and we sat in the barn smoking passing clouds and watching butterflies swarm over the privet bush, and the poor horse resting one hoof on the ground, that way they do when it hurts them, and the shadows lengthening in the late afternoon hush. And I was just thinking how I could stay there with you almost forever, and that you'll kiss me any time now. It was about then you threw away your cigarette, and I yelled at you because of the hay, and you said, okay, I'm sorry, and told me that the next day you were off to be a priest. And I laughed and punched you, because it was such a good joke. Only the way life turned out, things weren't all that funny. And so, although it's been great to see you again, and no, the child isn't yours, believe me, I would rather eat a whole load of your own horse's shit than call you father. This is from Cracking On. Arrhythmia. I don't write many love poems. That's much easier to write revenge poems. This is only a few of the love poems I've written. Arrhythmia. Yesterday, a frightened blackbird flew into our kitchen through the open door and could not find at first the way to leave. Helpless, I watched it struggle for an hour, saw how it held itself against the pane, with flailing wind, blinded by its despair. Now, as I lie awake throughout the night, held in the curving hollow of your arm, and catch the restless rhythms of your heart, I am reminded of the bard's alarm, of how its flutterings would fail and start again before it made it to the calm, cool guide paths of the outside air once more. You sleep, and do not know that I, as if such gentling, could keep you safe from harm, silently kiss your lips, your eyes, your hair. This is Joy's favourite, from Get Me Out of Here. It's Miss Pretty. Miss Pretty is a picture, boards our rush-hour train, beats two pensioners to the only free seat, and sits there glowing. Miss Too Pretty by half crosses one slim leg over another, admires the pale leather of her boots, her moon-glow nails, tosses back a swag of hair, and glancing round to assess the effect, bestows a smile upon the rest of us, drab, strap-hangers all. Little Miss Far Too Pretty for her own good does not know that she has spinach on her teeth. And this is from No Space But Their Own. It's the only poem I've ever had on the buses. This is on the buses in Jersey, apparently. The reality of eagles. Nothing can prepare us for eagles. The reality of them, their indifference, the grandeur of their wings, how they subjugate the air and the space between mountains, their shadows hovering between us and the sun. This is a memorial to a wonderful poet and woman called Julia Castro. My partner and I were going to see her in Finisterre in Spain, Galicia. only to find that she'd died by the time we got there. So this is in memoriam, Julia's doves, from Get Me Out of Here. We reach the long-planned rendezvous and find you gone. We search for your doves, but they are nowhere to be seen. There is only the grief of gulls, the scent of pine, the hot sun, and white-fingered waves clawing at the rocks. Instead of a wreath, we pick these flowers, the small wild flowers of Finistera, yellow bellflowers, gentians, wild thyme, white campion, and cast them out to sea, watch as the wind lifts and scatters them towards the Atlantic horizon, like birds, like butterflies, like words. And this is from Running Before the Wind, Leviathan. Across the sky, Leviathan, sprung from a cleft wave, has caught the splintered sun in a cataract of glass. His downward plunge through a swirl of plankton scatters the sequined shoals, cruising through canyons where his shadow prowls. The high, sweet notes call, plead and soar. A harpoon trails from his broken flank. A red surf breaks on the ocean floor. And this is a poem about my mother who died in 1988 at age 95. I'm catching up on her. I've got 10 years to go before I get there. From Transitions. Winter is well advanced, her days drawn in, leaves blackening beneath the frost, the trees pared down to bone and wrinkled skin. You put out crusts for ruffled birds, throw rinds, saying that should keep them through till spring. It takes 2 sticks for you to cross the path, to skirt the ice-blind hollows and worn stone, afraid of falling, broken hips. It would kill me to die in hospital, you say, then laugh, aware that bread alone will not keep you till spring. My last partner was a Yankee who lived in Spain, and his daughter lived in the Val d'Aran in the Spanish Pyrenees. Beautiful. I recommend it to go to, but it wasn't all good. In the Val d'Aran, from variable, sunset, soft airs, below us the village settles, the last eagle planes off on billowed wings. You pace the room, caught by another panic attack, and as if you sensed it, we hear a far-off threat. Our room suffused by light, first pale, then luminous, the night filled with Z-shaped mornings and waves that overwhelm us. We're trapped, thunder bellows around us as it ricochets from peak to echoing peak. Between the flashes, darkness too floods in, so deep we seem to drown in it. I search for matches, candles, clutch a long-forgotten rosary, try to reassure you, but the valley chalices the storm, offers its black mask to a no-good God, with we two as victims laid out on fear's altar, praying for deliverance. At midnight, the storm snarls off at last. You sleep, exhausted. I lay a rug over you, open a window, lean on the wide stone sill, search the now silent sky for hope and Aldebaran, but both remain distant, are light years away. This next one is from Shades of Meaning, and I was 7 when World War II broke out, and I was hiding under the kitchen table listening to the announcement from Mr. Chamberlain. In and out of the kitchen. In the kitchen, Hilda and Nancy are singing. Red sails in the sunset, they sing, red sails on the sea. But the silent child who is sitting there beneath the long scrubbed table floats out on the dog's red cushion into a sky as red as the tomatoes Hilda and Nancy are bottling. While the man on the wilder says, I have to tell you that no such message has been received. And Hilda and Nancy stop singing. That's it then, says Hilda, and we'll be for it, says Nancy. Now the child on the red cushion boat is sailing far away over Duxton Hill, Zachary's Field and Red Shorthorns, high over poor Miss Gatty's house, the Boar's Head and Millstone Farm. By the time she gets back, there'll be hot milk, ice biscuits, a long, blacked-out night, and the sky is lit up far redder than she'd ever imagined. And this is from Extraordinary Forms. It's about the armadillo. He was known as Poverty Pig in the Depression because the people short of food ate him. So that's why he's called Poverty Pig. Dusk over Jasper County, here he comes, old Daisy Puss, the nocturnal plodder, snuffling past us on the road towards Hampton. Small, armoured one, Hoover Hog, as a Tockley, names do not concern him. He moves on, stopping only to sniff the air or forage grass with snout and claws. He has come a long way, far from the rainforest, across the Isthmus, the Rio Grande, Texas, Florida, through swamps, prairies and scrublands, leaving a trail of fusty barrows, and now he's heading on, unhurried, to Kentucky, Nebraska, Illinois. But if need be, he can put on a turn of speed and has learnt this trick of jumping 3 or 4 feet high should trouble threaten, and at such times it's a toss-up, just who will come off worse, Dasypus novicinctus or Homo sapiens, the local aces, horroring after him in their rusty Chevys and battered pickup trucks. This is from Songs from the Unsung. Immigrant. At the flower stall on the corner, things have all the look of spring, those tender colours and such scents, but a broken crust of leaves across the pavement where pigeons beak for charity, the sun's pale face and the slight huskiness of the light insist upon December, while below ground an odd cold wind blows from the tunnel. A chill miasma of grease, dust and stale urine grabs the throat and stings the eyes, so that first I do not see him lying there under a shroud of blankets, still, monumental, embalmed in sleep. Then as I approach him, he stirs and rears up from his rags, start-eyed as Lazarus, haloed by wild black hair. And I am stopped there, astonished by the whiteness of his skin, smooth and unflawed as the old woman's rivers, as the strong shoots of plants that push through stones towards good air. And this last one, from Songs for the Unsung, is in memory of my grandson, Royal Marine Sam Alexander, MC. Trestles still away, folded and put aside, candles snuffed, the singing stops, the music dies. Dear God, mourners drift off and regroup by the gate. Dear God, there seems so little now to show for it all. Nothing but a rolled up flag, a scatter of wreaths, a bugle call, this shock of fresh dug earth. Thank you.
And now for 2 poets from West Yorkshire. First of all, Char March, who lives in Heaven Bridge. And Char is a prolific poet, but also writes novels and screenplays and is generally immersed in the world of writing in a way that's quite enviable and admirable. Oh.
Thank you very much indeed. It's fantastic to be here in Cork, and I'm just so enjoying getting to know the city. I haven't been for 30 years, and it's changed quite a bit. I grew up in Scotland, and from my mum's house, the Loch Linney spreads out in front of her. She looks due south across Loch Linney, and so we listen to the the shipping forecast, with certain trepidation, because it can get pretty wild, as it can here in Cork. And this is called, this is from Running Before the Wind, which is a wonderful collection of all sea poems, and this is called The Straight Lines of Sea Areas. This is the shape of the sea in Malin, northerly backing westerly, good, herring catches down, malleg ailing, cod endangered, glass falling. This is the taste of the sea in Hebrides, herring gulls, eggs, a salt fishness, young skewer meat smoking in strips, crofts hooded with rain, occasionally poor. This is the feel of the sea in Rockall, kelp slippiness, moon slivers rough or very rough, high racks of storm cloud, heavy swell all the way to Maine. This is the sound of the sea in Bailey, a screaming of white horses, teeth veering forced 8, severe, while on sea bottom boulders grind. This is the smell of the sea in Faroes, guano, boat diesel and famous grouse. A town of icebergs calving away north, the lonely scent of coconuts on the jet stream. And this one is from the lovely anthology of animals. Joy put out a call saying no cats, no dogs, no goldfish. She only wanted extraordinary animals. And so this one's called Extraordinary Forms, and it also has beautiful, beautiful illustrations in it. There's a lot of salmon farms around where my parents live, and occasionally we'll get a bountiful load of salmon come falling out of the air when occasionally they helicopter a very, very young salmon up to the loch behind my parents' house, which is in a corrie, and then they grow them up there to a certain size, about so big, and then they bring them down to the loch to finish them in the cages till they're about so big. And occasionally, when they've got them in these huge big plastic cases underneath the helicopters, these cases split. They're full of seawater, full of water, loch water, and these salmon, and they'll split as they're coming down and shower the whole village where my mum lives, the wee crofting community, with salmon. And everybody's out there straight away filling their freezers and stuffing them down their waterproof trousers and walking along the road. No, I've not got salmon. I've seen salmon. No, haven't you seen salmon anywhere? Anyway, so I have a certain affinity for salmon. And when I looked up about salmon, the Latin name is Salmo salar, I realised that all these different forms of salmon that they grow through, from the tiny wee eggs and then into tiny, tiny little versions of themselves, and constantly changing, each of these has obviously been observed over time for a very, very long time. So a lot of the names of these tiny little adaptations of salmon have got very strong Norse roots, and I love the sound of these words. Salmo salar. She hangs in the autumn water, a kite in her element, tugged by river wind. Her nose searches the currents for scents of the gravel bed where she became. That spring remembered when she pushed from her rechte between boulders, as big as her olive self. Through the massacre of frogs and trout and herons, she is transformed. Fry, then parra, then smolt self, sucks salt, slips from her natal stream, grows as an ocean grilse, weary of seals, sharks, skate, cod, till, belly fat with 3,000 lives, she snouts out that stream, fans and writhes in a cloud of milt over this river gravel. Now kelt, exhausted, she turns through the bodies of dying cockfish, her hunger pulling her back to the salt, to the salt. This one's about bees. Joy very sensibly decided to put together an anthology because we underestimate the need for insects, and I think since she brought out the anthology, she was one of the first people to recognise this problem. Since she brought out the anthology, there's been worldwide worry about bees, and 50p from each copy sold goes to the British Beekeepers Association to research the problems that bees are facing. And this is called Honey Honig, Honig being the German word for honey. I stand gasping inside the cloy of black netting, sucking in the sweet smoke, as much to try to calm myself as to drowse them. And they crawl in front of my myopia, black hair legs poking through the mesh, then stare their compound image of me back into the mind of the hive. And they calm me, and I become soporific, tuning into their insect leg language, the cleaning of their antennae and their modulating rhythms of hum-buzz. I never take much of their honey, Dad grumbles about the falling yield, talks about setting a fire under the buggers. So I've taken to hobbling to Lidl to check out offers on runny honey. Back in the jarring shed, the cool brick all round me blooming with rings of white salts. I am magician. Our yield climbs up the shining jars as I mix the German bees' Honig with our Yorkshires. Ours so much yellower, so much like the sunshine that pushes in through the cobwebbed window. I often wonder if our bees ever get fed up of the taste of rape. And because I'm a poet, of course, rape has got two meanings there. It's rape, that horrible yellow stuff that smells all the time out in the fields, and us raping them of their lovely stores of honey. I live just over the hill from the Brontes. They're always dropping round for tea. They always insist on having Bronte biscuits and Bronte Balti and this and that and the other. I quite often run writing workshops and stuff at the parsonage, so I know it very well. And this is from a small pamphlet that Joy put together called A Source of Strange Delight, which is all poems about the Brontes. This one's called Parsonage. This house is a looking glass, the sisters only just out of the reflection. The stone floors are grained with sermons and laudanum, the tread of Byronic heroes and moor peat. Their souls laying down layers of passion in tiny, careful script, their insect pens scrabbling from their hive mind. This home is a well-worn book, covers creased with hand grime, soot, dog hair, corners turned down lovingly, that familiar creak on the stair, turn of the clock's key, slide of the sash to shut out the owl talk, the choke of coal smoke, and that call from the moor. This is the latest of Greyhen's fabulous anthologies, and it's Songs for the Unsung. Again, Joy absolutely on message with what's happening in the world, and wanting to collect poems to talk about the difficulties of migration and globalisation and those left behind, and the people who don't have a voice. So I wrote a poem about a Nigerian man who came over to Leeds and then was hounded by the police for years in the 1960s, and they eventually murdered him. The police murdered him, and he was found floating in the River Aire. And his name was David Olawale, and there was a big campaign, Remember Olawale, and there's still an organisation now, a new organisation that's helping people with mental health problems and helping migrants in Leeds, where David Olawale ended up. And they ran a poetry competition, and this won their poetry competition. So there's lots of references in here. It's quite a dense poem, but I would urge you to find out a bit more about David Olawale, and also to donate to their organisation, because they're fantastic. It's called The Son of the Mother Whose Children Are Like Fish, which is a translation of the name of the river that David grew up next to. At 19, the mouth of the Ogun breathes him out. The Humber inhales him, but it's the air that slithers through his sharp-dressed dances, his college rejection, his labour exchange queue, that, once tetlied, slakes his foundry heat. Ellicott and Kitching are going white, stomping him through Allport's 5 stages. The Loyner rain finds him wandering abroad in the jungle of middy woods, shop doorways, Armley Nick, Milgarth Nick, the dark archers. It's Maya Beck that circles his corridor slur of highroids, where friends hold him, and the nurse chaperones his hand, dipping to the water blue airmail, Owan Baba, Owan Yemoja. And then it's stage 5, and the long stanked air holds him under. But PC Galvin blows his whistle, and Phillips writes lame darky, and Stanford smiling David speaks from British wirelesses, and when the 30-year gag coughs out police charge sheets marked WOG, it releases a rush of art and outrage that keeps David alive. And here he is, age 86, and in his garden we hold him. Here is quick laugh. Right.
This is your own phone?
Sorry? It's my own phone, but I've just set it to no.
I was looking around for who I ordered.
Yeah, no, it's okay. It's my own phone. I've set it to let me know when I've just got 2 poems left. And this one's about homelessness, and again, it won a competition for what that's worth. And the title is They Just Use Dogs to Get Extra Dosh. And I heard that on a BBC Radio Leeds phone-in about people sleeping rough in the city. They just use dogs to get extra dosh. It shouldn't be allowed. That's what she said on the radio. This is my person. He sleeps beside me. I have had him for 2 years. I found him in a Waitrose car park. I brought him some newspapers. My person likes newspapers and cardboard. He gave me a cream cake from the bin. He tied himself to me with string. This is our home. It glitters with smells. It is best in winter. Then the metal tubes blow hot air, and in summer it is the car's barks, and there are loud people, and they come and kick my person. They try to kick me. Sometimes he is sick. I usually eat his sick. Then I take him to the place that echoes, and they give him a hot bowl. They give me crunchy bits and a stroke, and then they scare my person with pieces of paper, and he takes his cardboard, and he takes my blanket, and I lead him back home. And then I'm going to ask my compatriot here to help me read this one. It's from Get Me Out of Here, Poems for Trying Circumstances. And I'm sure you'll all recognise this one. Do you want to come near the microphone? Okay, it's called Press 6, To Lose the Will to Live. Thank you for contacting us.
Your call is important to us.
We are always striving to improve.
Calls may be monitored or recorded.
Thank you for holding.
We are currently experiencing high call volumes.
We apologise for this delay.
Please continue to hold.
You are 13th in the queue.
We apologise for the hold in answering your call.
Please continue to follow by hash.
If you would like to use our automated delay,
please hold your 18-digit customer number,
followed by hash.
We are sorry, but that is not a valid hash.
You are now being delayed
to one of our customer service operatives.
They will be able to hold you.
All our calls are recorded to help delay you.
These records are delayed in accordance with the Data Protection Act.
We really do want to speak to you, so please hold us.
We will hold you after this short message.
As part of our ongoing commitment to provide you with excellent customer holding.
All our calls are recorded and monitored for breathing purposes.
We are currently experiencing high delay volumes.
You are 42nd in the queue.
We will delay your call further at the earliest opportunity.
Please continue to hold us.
We are currently experiencing high holes.
You have delayed at a particularly busy time.
Your delay is important to us. Please hold us later. Goodbye.
It's agony to even hear it sent out. Now we're going to hear Julia Deakin, who is a prize-winning poet from Huddersfield, just about Huddersfield, thereabouts, yeah. Well-known poet in West Yorkshire, does many, many readings all over the country, and I'm really pleased that she's decided that a holiday in Ireland would be a lovely idea for February. Julia.
Certainly I'm delighted to be here, and like Char, been here since 1973. It's changed a little and my memory has deteriorated somewhat. I'll start with one from Extraordinary Forms, which covers creatures which are extraordinary in some way or other. If you were to think of a creature at the lower end of the hierarchy, perhaps status poor, what might it be? This is a question for you, you can speak now. A worm, did somebody say?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you. I need press you no further. I chose to write about a worm because I feel that they have traditionally been regarded, symbolised as the lowest of the low, but without getting too anthropomorphic about it, they possibly don't see it quite like that. So I've invented my own species, Lumbricus rex, king worm, to try and restore some of that dignity. Upon my belly I shall go proudly, a stately retinue unto myself, no hole or palace barred me. I shall proceed at ease through private, studded corridors, or else, encased in grit, shall lie with it, pulsing, rippling, alive. At once tongue, finger, penis, nipple, what more is there? My soul a gut, I shall have more yet, my own self to love, my kind to meet and feed at death, but half immortal, each thrill of heat, dust, ice and flood, till then to taste, more dazzled by their spectrum than by sensed space or light. Seismically tuned, my body's length a flexible antenna, time too will be mine to apprehend. Lowest of the low, knowing salvation and damnation, I shall fear nothing. Bow down, world, to me, I shall be God of earth. Now from Get Me Out of Here, which has the subtitle Poems for Trying Circumstances, and it is a real antidote to many of those circumstances. Another person at the bottom end of a certain hierarchy is the beginning writer, and I imagine there are many writers here who have been through that stage. And to begin with, you may get rejection letters, which at one point included the phrase frequently, "Thank you for thinking of us." While you may be trying to write free verse, you discover that there are actually a great many rules to this business of freedom. So this is called "Thank you for thinking of us." No shards, no lozenges, no litanies, no seagulls, no patinas, no abstract nouns, no adjectives or very few, no haiku. No feelings named, no jokes explained, no smart-ass quips, no rock lyrics, no cats, no dogma, no chopping herbs at kitchen windowsills, no shock tactics, no eating after birth, no highbrow quotes, no dream tropes, no obscure myths, no bits in foreign languages, no Shakespeare for the sake of it, no lists like this, no ellipses like these. No one-word lines, no full rhymes unless you're Tony Harrison, no sing-song rhythms, no de-dum, 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 no facile puns, no lies, no libel, no obscenities, no soul-bearing, no lambent incandescent anything, no slips in tone or register, and hey, no publisher. I'd like to read now a poem by Liz Crosby. She acknowledges a debt to Christopher Smart and his 18th century Jubilate, in which he wrote in praise of his cat as a means of praising the wonders of creation and thereby God. And that is a popular workshop exercise, masterfully or indeed mistressfully handled here by Liz Crosby, and it is, "For I will consider my new mobile. For I will consider my new mobile, for it possesses 27 mysterious functions that my old one did not. For, although I am no slouch, its programming completely defeats me. For the accompanying booklet, though extensive, might as well be written in Klingon. For it also appears to omit the basic instruction, i.e., how to make a call. For therefore I ask my teenage daughter to provide assistance. For this she performs in 10 degrees. For firstly, she rolls her eyes and sighs dramatically at my incompetence. For secondly, she seizes the phone from me, tossing aside the booklet. For thirdly, she explains it all very slowly. For fourthly, she then programs the thing so fast that I cannot follow. For fifthly, she hands it over, saying it's okay now. For sixthly, she mutters, sad, when I still need clarification. For seventhly, she grabs it back, saying, give it here, then I'll test it out for you. For eighthly, when she wanders in again, I realise she has been chatting to her friends on it for over an hour. For ninthly, when I remonstrate, quite mildly, she shrugs and says, whatever. For tenthly, she has now wound me up completely, and I am still none the wiser. For kids today seem to be born understanding these devices, for they seem unable to exist, let alone function without them. For any passing Martian would think they were a new species, part human, part Bluetooth. For now, I am exasperated with the whole business and chuck the phone straight into my bag. For when I receive my first call the next morning, I discover that the ringtone is not the magic flute I have requested, for it is Dance With Me by Dizzy Rascal. For an important business meeting is not the best place to find this out. Now this is back to one of my poems. And it's for anyone who has tried to concentrate, either creatively or simply doing their tax return, and the two may not be mutually exclusive for some people, against a background of noise. Writers are notorious for allowing the day-to-day practicalities to mount until they have to get someone else in to do the basics. This is called nice work. In here, I'm trying to write a poem, while out there a man has come to clean the hall and landing carpet. Paul Armitage's home cleaning service, van in drive, is feeding 2 diameters of hose in through the windows. One sucks while the other blows, apparently. And is it okay if I run the hot tap? In here, I'm trying to write a poem going back in time 2,000 years. Out there, he, no, I'm fine, love, no problem. Starts up the compressor. In here, I'm hewing granite. Out there, he squirts detergent on each stair. In here, I'm hauling monoliths uphill on logs. Out there, he may have to move the piano slightly. In here, I'm chanting pagan funeral rites. Out there, I notice 2 different tones of suck, then intermittent thuds, clicks and bumps advancing on the door, which I get up and close properly, wondering how long the quarrying took. Out there, he's going to have to try the bathroom window. In here, oh, sod it. This book is helpfully divided into sections of different types of trying circumstances, and the final section, which is to some extent an antidote to the whole thing, is called Great Escapes. So this is another poem of mine called Far Side. I don't know about you, but I always have mixed feelings about going up in a plane. And it calls into question one's relationship with the solid earth. Far Side. The way how, when you go up in a plane, unsettled by the rush to take off, jostled by mere air, and by how deftly, finally, earth has been swiped from you. How, when you come to terms with this, and with being thrust like miners in a cage through crops of vapour credible enough for you to want to dodge them, you emerge into that brilliant blue realm, blinking like shorn sheep at some apprehended loss, but also simultaneously at such dazzling weightlessness, and at how heavenly life's old grey clouds look there below, turned inside out, snow-soft, sun-bright, and level as a causeway you could walk forever. I have one short poem in, am I okay for time? One very short poem in Shades of Meaning, which does what it says on the tin, the book that is, and this is called Gold. I'm 4 on the back seat of the car coming home from tea at Auntie's. I can read, I can count, I can tell the time. It's late at night. Soon it will be 8 o'clock. I'm staring at the twinkling lights across the dark, jewels more than anyone can count. And I'm asked to look out for a sign saying fish and chips. And from Songs for the Unsung, I shall read a poem by Merrin Williams called My Cousin. It's set in Bournemouth, which, in case you're not familiar, is on the south coast and or certainly was a well-to-do middle-class resort, rather straight-laced. My cousin, Edith Hemp, who died in 1930. She came here not to rest, to sweep the stairs and empty chamber pots. The gilded chairs still stand here. The enormous mirrors throw my face back as they did hers eons ago. Down the plush corridors she moved, her feet not echoing, dusting, leaving all things neat. Somewhere her midget room, a great way up those stairs, invisible beneath her cap to Bournemouth's guests, but I know who she was, my flesh, my blood, thrust early from the nest. A small, skimped woman when she was alive, all siblings lost, unmatched at 45. No trace, not one. Still stands the Grand Hotel, but now she rests, somewhere in Bournemouth still. And I think most of us are familiar with the photo of Alan Cordy, which covered the press internationally recently. This poem by Anne Drysdale is not quite about him. It's called Lost Boy. Not long after your picture had been filed, the press began to circulate another. Your brief appearance as drowned Syrian child was superseded by your little brother. The media reviewed the human damage, and Don McCullin, with his magnum eye, explained why Aylan's was the single image your tragedy will be remembered by. You were too clearly dead. He seemed asleep. He was the Twitter, ooh, the Facebook, oh. His was the picture that they chose to keep, an easy icon for a distant war. Your likeness now is difficult to find. Not quite so cute, and yet a lot more true. Uncomfortable, best to put out of mind. This poem, Halim Kurdi, is for you. And a short, eloquently understated poem by Josie Walsh, As I Remember. The bamboo ferry slip stands lopsided in the water, an outpost of the village growing old. The shallows lap against the pilings. Grateful for a breeze, the sampan, with its turquoise sail, gets up speed, sails past the sunset. But on the beach, in ribboned light, a small girl kneels to stop our path. I give good massage, she says. Any kind you want, I have. And I will finish now with a poem called Providence, which is the postlude to the book, and it's also a poem of mine. I mentioned Chapeltown towards the end. It's one of those inner city areas which gets a bad press, not always deserved. Providence. I have not stumbled down a street in Haiti with only half the skin on my back. I have not been taken out of school and taught to use an AK-47 on my family. I have not spent my adulthood locked up for a crime I did not do. I have not been given HIV from a contaminated blood transfusion. I have not eked my 3-year life out eating wallpaper. I have not handled methadone or strapped on explosives. I have not got God. But I have got to 53 and walked through Chapeltown and known, and sometimes known. Thank you.
That, I think, is such a beautiful poem to end Songs for the Unsung, which contains so many poems about people in circumstances that we would often prefer to forget. Now, I'm going to be doing my own reading soon, but we have with us Elsa Fischer, who has been somebody associated with Grey Hen for a long time, has won prizes in our competition, and happens to be at the Cork Festival, and has a poem in Songs for the Unsung. So I'm inviting her now to come and read that to you.
translated a poem into Songs for the Unsung. Maybe a little bit of background. I am Dutch. I live in Switzerland, which doesn't mean that I'm rich. 4 years ago, I moved into a retirement home, and that has been very inspirational because 4 years later, I have 22 poems about the exciting, sad, beautiful, and heroic things that happen in a retirement home. It was also included in my pamphlet, Palmistry in Karachi, that was launched in September last year with Templar poetry. And I'm happy to read it for you. I was quite curious to know when I moved in, how does an institution like that function? And I went straight for the chef, cook, Monsieur Joie, who is from Paris, which is not reflected in his cooking. He tells me he is cooking convenience food, whatever that is, and I followed him. Memory ward. You tag along with a chef to learn how 100 meals are served hot and all at once. He takes you to the memory ward, lets you serve the pureed lunch that looks like scoops of ice cream. And I proffer the vanilla potatoes, pistachio greens, and mocha meat, hoping to jolt their memories of summer and seaside joy. But features remain frozen as spoons are picked up and carers tie the paper bibs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elsa. It's a lovely piece of happenstance. Right, here are my books, and I'm not going to read from them all, because other poets have done them justice. I'm going to read a couple from Cracking On, because this book was devised as a discussion of aging, and so only women over 60 have poems in it. And I don't think our companions, apart from Angela, have reached those exalted heights yet, or had at the time, rather. Only 5 minutes. Right, I'm going to be very quick then. Anne Alexander, a poet who has had a lot of poems in our anthology. I'm going to read this one. It's called Listing. Because I have acquired the rarity value that comes with a long history, because I am corrugated with a fine grey patina, the Society for the Conservation of Run-Down English Women, SCREW, is attempting to have me listed. They consider my mossy overhang, my bulging sides, to be ripe for preservation. They admire the sturdy way I have endured so many storms. They fear that someone else with doubtful taste will turn up, take me over, insist on radical dentistry, Brazilian waxing, nip and tuck, Atkins, Botox, even a boob job. And all the charm of a certain antique style of woman would be lost. Now I have been offered to the National Trust. Sightseers crowd my door, curious to see what happens when a woman simply grows old. Running Before the Wind, my book poems about the sea. I'm just going to read one of mine quickly from here, because the last section in it is about how somehow or other the sea, and believe me, I had so many poems sent to me for this anthology, how the sea is kind of part of us and runs through us. And this was my contribution to that section. It's called Stranded. And anchored in a fretwork of foam, of a sea shimmering silver gilt sand, I'm bliss basking like an old grey seal, beached and loving it. So till the seventh wave lolls over me and nudges me back to the sea, let your hands glide over mounded flesh and soft pelt, while you plumb my fathomable eyes and marvel at my stillness. Believe me, I'm more graceful in water. Now, what else shall I read you a poem from Throwaway Books. I'll read you a poem from the book about bees. And I'm not at all sure that I was the first person to identify this problem, but perhaps the first person to produce a poetry book about it. And I commissioned a poem, because I've always been fascinated by it, from a poet who is also a mathematician, which is an unusual combination. And I said, write me a poem, please, about the mathematics of the hexagon, of the honeycomb, because I've always been absolutely fascinated by how it happens. But she didn't. And so I did what I do in these circumstances, and I looked things up on the website and create a poem they're called found poems, and I'm very fond of them. And anyway, this will tell you all you want to know about the mathematics of the hexagon, believe me. A perfect hexagon. It's to the bee's advantage that the shape, providing the maximum cell area, has the minimum expenditure in energy and materials. And engineers confirm that such a structure provides the maximum strength at 0.05 millimeters thick. Each wall supports 25 times its own weight. But mathematicians still conjecture that as the cell bottom consists of 3 equal rhombi, there's an isoperimetric problem for honeycombs, close to, but not quite, the optimal. Let's hope the bees are working on this. Time is running out. I'm just going to do one more then. I'm going to read this poem. Oops. I'm going to read you this little poem because I'm from Cumbria and we have suffered a great deal with floods. And I understand that Cork has also had some problems with floods recently, so this is just a little envoi for you to send you on your way. The Flood's Prayer, and it's by a poet called Dinah Shaw. Our weather, which art inclement, horrid be thy rain. Thy downpours come, and sewage scum seeps up the loo through the U-bend. Give us this day some sunny spells, spare us the cumulonimbus, as we spare those who splash puddles beside us. Lead us not into precipitation, but deliver us from drizzle. For thine is the torrent, the deluge, and the pouring, whatever the weather. Ho hum.